Area Chamber of Commerce. It's an election year, and I'm sure none of you are tired of having somebody call you and ask you where your ballot is, or all that stuff that ends up on your front porch every weekend. But this is the last week, and pretty soon, the only person coming to your door will have a sack and want some candy. And it won't be me. There are big mountains to climb in 2015. I have so enjoyed serving you in the Oregon House for 6 years, and as your state senator these past 2 years. I'm looking forward to doing so again in 2015. This is my 38th year living here and working in the beautiful Willamette Valley, and my dream is to work to provide safe streets and communities, first-class education for our kids from kindergarten through trade school and or college, so that we and our children or grandchildren can enjoy prosperity and good jobs with good incomes right here where our families live. How can we do all that? How will I do that for Senate District 8? Well, you begin where you are at. When I grew up, people didn't lock their doors of their homes or their cars. We had just one murder in our small city over a period of 18 years. We walked to school safely. Things have become more dangerous over the decades. As a legislator in 2013, I worked with Democrat Senator Bessie Johnson to pass a human trafficking bill, putting a felony on the first offense of purchasing sex with a minor. We protected Oregon children because these are the times that we live in. I know the value of an education. As it was said, I earned my BA from Washington State, and then I went back to become a teacher. I went to Central Washington University, did a BA in education, and I taught in Washington State. And then I was offered a graduate teaching assistant at Oregon State, and I came down to get my Master's of Science degree. I taught a 200-level class, 2 education majors at OSU. I was a public school teacher, middle and high school level, teaching at North Albany Middle School and South Albany High School here in town. And it was there that I had a student, I was about 28 years old, and I learned he was not going to graduate, and so I asked the administration about him, and they informed me that he had never learned to read. And so he did not graduate, and I've thought many years about him. So as a legislator in 1999, my first session, I passed a phonics reading curriculum bill. There were several of us that sponsored that for teachers who requested it. It was actually never implemented by the state of Oregon, and it has since been repealed. In 2014, I passed an advanced placement bill so that freshmen and sophomores could earn college credit and save on tuition costs, because these are the times that we live in. I know the value of a job. After my education at OSU, I worked as a job developer for Benton County. In those days, we had CETA grants from the federal government, and I set up on-the-job trainings for underprivileged students back in the late 70s, and I worked with employers, and for 6 months, the grant would pay the wages for 6 months for that student to work with that job and become trained. I know that it works, and we are still doing this with the Comprehensive Youth Program people and the consortium that I worked with on a smaller scale. One young man who I worked with had come here homeless from Michigan, and he was placed at a print shop in Dallas and did very well there, learning a skill. Another young woman worked in an office and later became a nurse. I believe she's still at Good Samaritan Hospital and has done very well. So as a legislator in 2013, I passed the Youth Employment Bill through the Oregon Senate to provide grants for counties so they could partner with small businesses to give our youth that first job, 14 to 19. That did not pass the House, so I'm going to reintroduce that. But Linn County has had this program on their own for 10 years, and they pay $2 per hour of the wage to the small business for several months under a contract so that that young person is getting trained and having that first job. So I'll be drafting that again. As a senator, I see my main job as protecting the public. So I've also voted against bills that threaten our communities. No to marijuana distribution centers in our communities, because there were no limits on how much of the federal Schedule A drug that can be stored there. No to violent criminals being released before their sentence is up, because that was the will of the Oregon voters in Measure 57. No to Oregon DMV providing driver cards to people without proof of legal presence in the United States. We need to have one law that we all live under here. Because of economic recessions during the times that I served, I also voted no on bills to raise small business taxes, raise our gas tax, no on raising tuition in 2002, raising our income taxes, I voted no on that, and no to raising our fees for a number of state licenses. We always have a number of bills every session that raise fees up and up and up for people that are making a living in those areas. And these two are the times that we live in. Our form of government is a representative republic, and we were the first one on the face of the earth to have that, I believe. In America, we determine by voting who will vote on our behalf. We elect to send our most trusted people to the legislature, and I feel that every time I vote. I feel the public trust depending on me. Our economic system of free enterprise and capitalism has grown America to be the richest country on the earth. Our standard of living is very high. Students come from all over the world to be educated here, and maybe you've run into them as I have in Weimar, and they have a British accent and they're studying at OSU, and I find that fascinating. It's our privilege to share our strengths with others. But now we see creeping socialism, destroying our industries, even here in Albany, and our businesses and jobs through more and more taxes, government regulation, and government spending. That wasteful spending in Oregon has also been huge. $250 million lost on Cover Oregon, which is a failed health insurance website. $190 million lost on the Columbia River Bridge project, a bridge that was to be 1/3 lower with no drawbridge, trapping many of our shippers upstream. I voted no on that. Oregon is 49th out of 50 states in graduation rates. So we have a 30% dropout rate with a $6.8 million education budget. And even more with that with the federal funds. The main reason students give for dropping out, irrelevant coursework. And so with the resources we have, I think we can fix that if we work hard. We need to have classes that bring skills to our students. My own son took an auto mechanics class when he was at North Medford High School, and he had a teacher that was a race car driver, and they were expensive cars that he raced. And I remember that course book cost $50 to buy, and to this day, he, for his hobby, he still fixes a whole lot of people's cars in our garage. He goes to car shows. His car was just awarded the online. He's got the award for best Mini Cooper in the States. So these are good skills. We want success for our kids and our grandkids. So I'll be working towards that. As voters, we really can determine what the future will be for Oregon. We can vote against legislators who vote for wasteful projects. We can vote for legislators who deliver on their promises. That's our right and duty as Americans. Thank you. Representative Gelser.
Thank you all very much for coming this afternoon, and thank you to the Albany Chamber for hosting us here today. I know when I got the invitation to this event last summer, it seemed like a lifetime away. It was very difficult to imagine the Wednesday before the election. And so here we stand. I am confident that all of you are ready for all of us to stop knocking on your doors and ringing the phones, as Senator Close mentioned. I know my daughter last night told me she's looking forward to me making meatloaf. So that's where post-election priorities lie in our house. I have served in the Oregon House. It's been my great privilege to do that since 2005. My attitude serving in the House is that I'm there to represent and stand up for the people in my district and the people in Oregon. I go to work every day with a desire to listen to what people are telling me. Not just the people that are paid to be in the building, but the people that call me, the people that write to me, the people that I talk to at grocery stores, the people that I talk to when I'm knocking on doors during campaigns. People who have real problems. And that really has formed the basis of the work that I've done and some of the accomplishments that I've been able to deliver for the state of Oregon. And I believe that Oregon is a better, safer place because of some of the work that my constituents have given me the opportunity and the support to do. A few examples of this. I wrote legislation, introduced and passed it, creating a statewide charitable pharmacy program in the state of Oregon. This was an idea that came from a constituent. It doesn't cost the state money to do this, but consumers are able to take back their unused sealed prescriptions to a pharmacist who can then redistribute them to uninsured and underinsured Oregonians who would otherwise not have access to these drugs. We have distributed thousands and thousands of medications under this program, including diabetic drugs, mental health drugs, cardiac drugs, and cancer drugs. That has made a real difference for thousands of Oregonians. In my first session, I was able to introduce and pass legislation that made Oregon the first and only state in the country with statewide standards for modified diplomas. This helped keep more kids in school all the way through high school and prepare them for post-secondary opportunities. This worked well until 2 years ago when the federal government took their financial aid away for pursuing a post-secondary program. That made me pretty mad, so I traveled on my own dime to Washington, D.C. to meet with top federal education officials and show them exactly what our kids are doing to earn these modified diplomas. As a result, this spring, the federal government switched their position, and Oregon students, and only Oregon students earning modified diplomas, are now able to access Pell Grants and student loans so that they can attend community college and four-year degrees. This impacts about 1,400 Oregon students a year. I'm proud that I was able to help make that happen. Also in my first session, I was able to work on something called Carly's Law. We had a young child in my community who tragically died as a result of abuse, despite that abuse being reported and her being investigated for abuse several times. She didn't get the medical care that she needed. Had she had the opportunity to go to the ABC house here in Albany, she would still be here today. I was able to pull together people from across the state. We crafted Carly's Law. It ensures that children get child abuse medical assessments immediately when they need them. As a result, thousands of abused children have gotten these comprehensive assessments who wouldn't have gotten them before, and we know that we've saved lives. Other states are looking to replicate this law in their states. I've introduced and passed legislation to elevate the crime of strangulation to a felony. I've passed 3 different bills strengthening Oregon's rape statutes so that we can better prosecute those who rape seniors, people with disabilities, and small children that aren't able to testify in court, those who are raped when they are incapacitated. I've introduced and passed legislation that has made it possible for people to get restraining orders against non-intimate partners who have sexually assaulted them in that time between the arrest and the criminal trial. These are real changes that we've been able to make. As a legislator, it's also my responsibility to take hard votes sometimes, to make difficult choices that aren't necessarily going to be popular. And I wanted to point out a couple of them. I'll look at my timer really quick to see where I'm at. So the first that I would point out is in 2009, when I chaired the Education Committee. I've had the opportunity to chair the Education Committee for the past 6 years. I'm a huge education advocate and actually come out of the disability community. We learned that the Oregon School for the Blind only had 32 students left in it. Of those students, only 9 of them were blind. They had lost their accreditation in the early 1990s, and they had not granted a high school diploma since the 1980s. We were spending over $200,000 per year on each of these students who were leaving not prepared for anything but poverty in adulthood. We took the very difficult step of closing the Oregon School for the Blind, setting aside all of the money that we currently spent on it and putting it in something called the Oregon Blind and Visually Impaired Fund, which served all 856 students who were blind and visually impaired across the state of Oregon. As a result of that, as we followed up, some of those kids have graduated from high school and are now in college. Kids who were in districts across the state have access to Braille instructors and Braille that they didn't have before. We have a statewide goalball team where blind students, no matter where they live in the state, are able to participate in social and athletic opportunities. And we have one Oregon student who, with help of the Blind and Visually Impaired Fund, is deaf and blind and was able to attend a university on the East Coast. That was not a popular decision. Nobody wants to say they closed a school for the blind, but it was the right thing to do. And sometimes when you serve, you have to do the unpopular things because it's the right thing to do. I've been honored to work with Representative Olson, who has also been willing to do difficult things around public safety. I was proud to vote in favor of the bill that he led this last session that bettered the way, made it smarter the way that we deal with public safety issues. We were able to increase our investment in prevention services, double the number of domestic violence beds across the state, and to make our state safer. I really appreciate Representative Olson's work on that and on a bill that made our statewide sex registry a safer, better thing for our communities to better understand who is on those registries. Nobody is safer when two teenagers who have consensual sex are on a sex registry for the rest of their lives. We need our public safety dollars to be focused on those who are dangerous to our community, and when people get online, they need to know who the real sexual predators are in the community. I'm proud to support that work, and I'm proud of that work. Going into the Oregon State Senate, I look forward to the opportunity to serve this broader district. It's a very interesting district that includes tens of thousands of university students. It includes farmers and business people, university workers and mill workers, natural resource workers, and farmers. My goal is to continue listening to people, and I started that work in this campaign. I have personally knocked on thousands and thousands of doors. The people in my campaign together, volunteers and my staff, we have talked to over 30,000 people on their doorsteps. We have learned about the problems that people are facing right here in Albany and Corvallis and Tangent and Pittsburgh. We've already started to address some of those problems. There's a Section 8 housing facility just down the street from here that is getting new siding and windows because when we were there, we discovered that it wasn't up to code and those tenants were unsafe. I'm proud that our campaign has been able to work to help people in the process of trying to win election to the state senate. I can't promise you that we will always agree on every issue. I don't know that there are any two people in this room that will always agree on every issue. But what I can tell you is that when I go to Salem to represent this district, I will give it my all. I will be persistent, I will be passionate, I will be truthful, I will always tell you where I stand, and when I make a mistake, I'll tell you, and I'll take responsibility for that. Because we all make mistakes. We all sometimes have to go back to change things, and I've done that in legislation that I've introduced. I've come back the next session to amend it and make it better. The legislature is supposed to be a thoughtful place about human interaction, about thoughtfulness, about serving, and that's what I want to do. I hope that I can earn your vote when you fill in your ballot next week. If you have any questions, I give my personal phone number out to everyone. Call me anytime. I'd love to hear from you. Would love to have breakfast with you as I did with Mr. Lehman. I don't think I earned his vote, but I surely learned a lot that will help us serve better. And I thank you all so much for having us here today. I look forward to your questions.
So we're just going to make sure that the microphones work. What we're going to do is we're going to alternate questions for the candidates. And thank you for those of you who gave us questions to ask them. Do both of your microphones work? Perfect. The way we're going to do this is we're going to ask the candidates each the question, and they have 2 minutes or less to answer the question. First question is, and we are going to start with Representative Gelser this time. During the special session last year, the legislature passed House Bill 3601, which contained tax increases. A portion of the bill removed the senior medical tax exemption. This has hurt many seniors. Do you have plans to fix this issue?
Thank you so much for that question. There's a lot of misinformation about that. The senior medical exemption or the additional medical deduction was not ended. It was changed from a deduction to a subtraction. As a subtraction, that means that lower income seniors are able to access this help. Before, the only way that you could access it was that if you were itemizing your deductions. As you can imagine, for seniors on fixed incomes, that locked out many of them. At the upper end of the income scale, for individuals with income of $150,000 or couples with an income of $300,000 in their retirement, we started to cap or means test the amount of that deduction. Oregon's the only state that has this additional deduction or additional subtraction. The federal piece remains unchanged, where if you have, although I think the federal government raised it last year as well, it used to be 7%, it's now 10% of your gross income. If that goes to medical expenses, you can deduct that from your federal tax returns. And that protects all of us, regardless of age, from catastrophic medical expenses. And so that is unchanged. But we did not end the senior medical or special additional medical deduction. We changed it to a subtraction.
Thank you very much. Senator?
Thank you. I was very concerned about that bill. That was sort of a Christmas tree bill. It had a whole bunch of stuff in it. There was a small business tax cut, but there was a cigarette tax increase. They redirected the rainy day fund, took the rainy day fund, put it in the general fund, which means it could be spent on anything. They increased the C corporation tax rate. So I had concerns about this bill concerning and voted no. Concerning the senior medical deduction part of it, what you need to know is those are revenues that are taken from seniors who really have told me they would like to take care of themselves and keep their money so they can do that. So just so you know what the numbers are, in 2013 to 15, 82 million was collected from our seniors in this biennium. In 2015 to 17, it'll be 117 million. In 2017 to 2019, it'll be 158 million, and it keeps going up. And so that has my no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is, and this time we're going to start with Senator Close. How did you vote on mandatory paid family leave act and why?
Do you have the session bill number for them?
I do not.
Mandatory family leave, we had a bill in 2013 that said for bereavement, people would be able to go to funerals. I did vote for that. And you did say, you said medical?
How did you vote on mandatory paid family leave and why?
Okay. But the issues beyond that, as we talk about more and more leave for different things, we have to look at what the cost is to employers. And as you know, you that have your private businesses, each time you provide more and more leave days, that cuts into your bottom line, and eventually it becomes burdensome to businesses. So I try to be very careful about those bills and how I vote on those.
Representative?
So I certainly support family leave. I don't believe we voted on that in the House this past year.
Okay. And this one, sorry, I'm having to paraphrase this. How are you going to help get laws in place to restrict illegal immigrants? And Representative Gelser, it is your turn first.
Thank you. Well, the issue of immigration really is a federal issue, and that conversation needs to happen with our federal delegation. The control of our borders, what you go through to become a legal U.S. citizen or be legally present in the United States is something that sits with the federal government. The state of Oregon needs to address the issues that come up within our state. I know one of the issues that came up earlier was the issue of driver's cards. I did support the driver's cards along with a bipartisan coalition. Our farmers, our ag industry, our restaurant industry, many of our business owners really urged us to support that bill. I've been disappointed. I know that reasonable people can disagree on the legislation. I've been disappointed with the tone of the campaign against Measure 88. I've been particularly disappointed with those suggestions that those who might go to get a driver's card are terrorists that want to hijack airplanes. I know there's one political ad that's running right now that says the next time you sit on an airplane, you may be sitting next to a terrorist, thanks to Peter Courtney. I think that's outside the bounds of political discourse, and I hope that we can discuss things based on issues without fanning the flames of racial animosity and forwarding really negative stereotypes.
Thank you. Senator Close?
Well, as I said before, it's really not good for a nation to have two sets of laws that apply to different people. That's discrimination, and it creates chaos, in my opinion. The driver card, there has been a call made to TSA. The media has reported it, that is a state ID card, and so those who have it can get on airplanes, just to clarify that. Someone said to me, you know, either everyone has to show proof of legal residency or no one does to get a driver's license. That's what's fair. That's what was said to me. We don't want to create a permanent underclass of people who are always in the shadows because they don't care under the same law. And we do operate on the rule of law in this country. Tennessee passed this law. They've since rescinded it because of the huge amount of human trafficking and fraud that it caused in their state. Another issue is in the I-9 forms that you sign as employers, swearing that who you hire is here legally. And then if you see they have a driver's card, then what do you do? The issue of perjury. We're the only nation on earth that doesn't have a closed border. We need to do better. I think we can have a controlled border, but that needs to be the first step before we change state laws and give privileges to people who are here illegally. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a two-part question, and Senator Close, I'll have you go first. What is your position on the legalization of marijuana? And if the initiative should pass, the OLCC licensing and regulatory startup costs are estimated to cost over $2 million. In your opinion, where would these startup costs come from before any tax revenue can be realized?
Well, I am the vice chair of Senate Judiciary, and the Judiciary committees in the House and the Senate have been meeting jointly over the interim. We've had some pretty interesting hearings. One of the hearings was on marijuana legalization. We had someone from Washington State come and talk about some of their problems. They were concerned about communities like Skillicum around Tacoma was very concerned because that's where Joint Base Lewis McCord is. And they were concerned for their soldiers. There's many problems with it. We had an attorney come from Florida who showed the problems in the food that are bought in these marijuana stores. The first day that Colorado put it in a number of incidents of children going to the emergency room who had eaten the food products that are laced with marijuana. They're also having problems with pets dying. So you can see this wasn't a well thought out deal. Even I believe the governor of Colorado has said that it was a rash move, a reckless move. So they're thinking theirs over. We have a chance to do that and watch what other states do before we implement anything like this. I do have concerns because I've seen people who have been on marijuana for many years, and there is a change in them. We now find that psychologists, psychiatrists are saying that it especially impacts youth, and it does take away their innovation and their ability to succeed. And we need to think about that carefully. So when you vote, it's your vote, but really look at what's happening in other states. I believe Colorado budgeted around $10 million to deal with the law enforcement problems, and they had testimony they had gone through that, all of it within 6 months.
Thank you. So we'll know next Tuesday what the voters decide. I'm personally uncomfortable with Measure 91. I think I'm in the minority of Oregonians in terms of my assessment of that. So I think the real question that's important is how will the legislature respond to the implementation. One of the things that's important is that this is a statutory measure and not a constitutional measure. So if there are errors in it, we will be able to come back and make it better. We do need to look at the states that have gone through this so far to see what we can learn from their experience. And the issues range from how do we keep our roads safe and look at driving under the influence, how do we regulate distribution and inventory and stock and make sure that we are keeping this out of the hands of kids, marketing. The revenue issues really are quite complicated. If you put too much of a tax on it, you will have gone through the process to make this legal, but you'll still push everything into the black market anyway. I think that's part of what's happening in Washington. People can buy it cheaper under the table than they can when they go to a store and pay the tax on it. So there's a lot of work that we'll need to be doing. I know that state agencies have already convened their leadership to start making a list of some of these things that we need to work on. I know we have folks that are in the legislature that are very interested in this. Representative Olson has clearly been a leader in this area, and it's a lot of work that we have ahead of us if the voters choose to take us down this path next week.
Thank you. This comes from a small business owner, and he or she says, as a small business owner, how should I expect you to understand the struggles I face as a business owner? So,
Well, I regularly meet with business groups that come to the Capitol, and they inform me of the burdens that they are placed on them. We meet regularly with the chamber here in Albany and also the Corvallis Chamber. And I remember one woman saying to me, please, before the 2013 session, please don't put any more regulations on us. We won't be able to operate with more burdens and regulations. So I'm very aware of it. My husband is a sales manager for a company. He sees it in his business. He works with the markets daily, and so he's watching what's happening with inventories and shipping. And I'll I'll just give you one example. When California brought in the low carbon fuel standards, a lot of the truckers there went out of business in California. And so around Christmas, when there's a lot of traffic with trucking, his plant was not able to get trucks to ship products to the port because there were no truckers to ship into California. And so this is what happens when you pass regulations and they're not carefully thought out, because they do influence trade and jobs, you know, and inventories build up. What does a plant manager do? Well, they lay off people. So it affects our communities, and we have to be very careful. Thank you.
Representative?
I always think it's a challenge to say that any one person understands exactly the experience of another, because we never walked in the other person's shoes. But as it relates to small business, I grew up in a household where my dad is a serial entrepreneur. Many small businesses when I was a child. Probably did my first paid work as a first or second grader cleaning the office, then started stuffing electronic boards. We saw changes in our family, all depending on making payroll. I grew up listening to my parents talk about the sacrifices that our family would make sure that everyone got paid. I've watched our family as a child sell off cars, move to different houses. I've actually watched my parents do that recently in order to make payroll and take care of the people that are working for them. So that is a challenge that I have watched my parents go through. I know the great risk that business owners take, that they put everything that they have into it. I think business owners are good people that are working on serving their communities and taking care of their employees. I'm really proud of the lessons that I've learned from my dad. I think he's sometimes frustrated with me. I'm the only Democrat in the family. But I've certainly learned a lot from him. He's a great employer. People follow him from state to state. And one year my dad had more patents to his name than Oregon State University. So he's been a great person to learn to, and someone I often turn to talk to when we have business issues in front of legislature.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. And this question is, what specific steps would you take to make Oregon a more business-friendly state that can attract potential employers, and specifically to the Willamette Valley? And Representative Gelser.
Thank you. I think the first is making sure that we have a workforce-ready graduating class of high school students. And that relates particularly to the trades. Many of our folks who are in the trades are of an age that they're about to retire. We have a huge need in that workforce. And what we've done over the last couple of decades, in addition to taking those programs out of our middle schools and high schools, we've really stigmatized those professions. That makes no sense, because our communities desperately need those workers. And those are really good paying jobs. Since I've been a school board member in Corvallis, where I served for 5 years, I've been focused on this issue. My support of the Corvallis School District local option levy and facilities bond both were contingent upon making sure that we were investing resources in building state-of-the-art trades spaces and facilities within our programs. We now have those at Corvallis High School, and in the local option levy, having staff that could actually teach these skills and teach them well. If these students are able to come through and do these things, more businesses will want to be here, because they'll know that they have engaged, excited young people who are ready to be trained and move into that work. And we also need to be supporting those programs at Lynn Benton Community College. When we talk about 40-40-20, it's great for people to go on to a 4-year degree. Our economy can't afford for everybody to have a 4-year degree, nor can our economy afford to not have people with trades and career certificates. The second thing that's totally different from education, the Mid-Valley really struggles with our transportation system. It's hard to get here. It's, I've represented Corvallis for a long time. We have a hard time getting people there because we're not even on a freeway. So we need to continue improving our rail connections that are here, including the frequency that goes north and south from our rail stations, so we can have more people that want to come in to visit our businesses, to be able to work here and get out to go and do other things they want to do. We need to improve the safety of I-5 in this area, Highway 20 and Highway 34. It's hard to get attention. Okay, it's hard to get attention here for our infrastructure projects, but that's something I'm committed to and want to continue working on.
Thank you.
Well, let me just read off what some of our business taxes are here in Oregon. We have partnership taxes, we have corporate taxes, we have payroll, withholding, self-employment taxes, we have the state tax, we have a trust tax, we have a state lodging tax, we have a tobacco tax, we have a state capital gains tax of 9%. And so when corporations are looking at states to go to, they're going to look at things like that. On a website that I looked at once, a business website, where Oregon was listed, business people had listed the health exchanges as being one of their concerns in Oregon. Migration is interesting to look at. There's a book called The Wealth of States, and it looks at the migration patterns of the last 10 years. Where are people moving to? What states are they going to? Well, they're going to states with no income tax, and they're going to states where the housing is cheaper. And so we find in our state people going across to Vancouver. Vancouver is booming because they don't have a state capital gains tax of 9% like we have. So we really need to do work looking at what other states are doing, I believe, and why people are going there, and applying that to Oregon, because we have a wonderful climate, we have wonderful resources. I think, as these two students have shown, we have a good workforce of well-educated kids that are out there and want to work, but we have these other hurdles that we've got to get over. And so I've already done some work on that. I worked with one constituent who came here from back east. He wanted to move here. His daughter was in Corvallis. But he said the death tax would kill us because we have a family foundation. We'd like to donate that money to the community, a lot of it. But if I pass away, we would lose millions and millions of dollars.
5 seconds, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I sure appreciate both candidates being with us today. So again, thank you very much, Senator Close and Representative Gelser. And I do have a token of our thank you.